They help put football on the map.
Let's go! They just have one wave of NFL talent after another in recruiting classes.
Come on, John, run!
You are looking live at the top 10 football factories of all time.
How do you define a football factory?
Who churns out football players for the NFL?
Which college program has produced the best NFL players over the entire history of the league?
Big Ten is big in this top 10 deal, huh?
When you put those guys in the SEC, we smack them around.
I hate to do a former Buckeye like that.
It's the only school that can go by a letter.
From Red Grange to Tom Brady.
Who's number one?
Who was number one?
Who's number one?
Did your school make the list?
Barely made the list.
Did people vote on that?
Oh, no.
Who do you think it is?
Let the debate begin.
The number 10 football factory of all time, Tennessee.
Tennessee. Not Tennessee. Maybe because I beat Tennessee all 4 years.
I kind of look at that program, and everywhere I turn, doesn't matter what the position is, they've got elite speed out wide.
They got that man coverage, and Carl Pickens just blew it away.
They've had great quarterbacks.
Score! Woo!
They've had running backs.
Travis Henry.
Jamal Lewis! That's the steamroller there.
The defensive tackles.
Reggie! Hello, Reggie!
They've always developed NFL talent.
Barely made the list at 10. Are you kidding me? I could go on all day about players.
Witten at the 5, walk it on in, big man.
The names that make it so terrific.
One name in particular.
You think Tennessee? You think Peyton Manning?
Peyton Manning?
You think mostly of Peyton Manning.
Peyton, who's your favorite football player then?
My dad.
Peyton Manning was a great college quarterback. He's become one of the best NFL quarterbacks of all time.
That's 3 touchdown passes for Manning.
Despite being a great NFL player, all anyone in Knoxville cares about is that he beat Alabama.
We finally beat them my sophomore year. We're in Birmingham. You got your section of traveling fans who travel with you. The whole team runs over there. Seniors are crying. That's the big rival.
We don't give a damn about the whole state of Alabama. We're from Tennessee.
Going to school in Knoxville, which is Tennessee football from Memphis up to Johnson City all year long.
You ever go to a game in Neyland Stadium? It is great. 106, 107,000 people singing Rocky Top.
Tennessee football had just great tradition and history. All the legendary coaches and players going back from George Caffico to, of course, General Neyland and Johnny Majors, and that was a big deal for me.
I think people forget he had 4 or 5 wide receivers that became NFL wide receivers that he was working with.
Fearless Price, 10-5, and in for the touchdown.
Tennessee's always had a lot of good players, fast receivers.
They were the ones that brought guys like Stanley Morgan, the Stanley Steamer.
Touchdown, Stanley Morgan!
Willie Gall.
First round, Willie Gall from Tennessee.
They brought the speedy track star wide receivers into the National Football League.
It's funny because when I think Tennessee, everybody talks Peyton Manning. People talk wide receivers.
Fire to the left side of the end zone.
I'm amazed at how many defensive tackles they've turned out over the years and defensive linemen. You know, obviously Reggie White is kind of the poster child for the University of Tennessee, and justifiably so. But they've had Haynesworth.
It's Albert Haynesworth!
John Henderson.
John Henderson wrapped him up at the 43.
Doug Atkins, big defensive end who was just so dominant in both college and the pros.
Doug Atkins was like a storm rolling over a Kansas farmhouse. He came from all directions, and all there was to do was to tie down what you could and hope he didn't take the roof.
Tennessee got our number 10 ranking because of its 37 Pro Bowlers and 2 Hall of Famers, both who happen to be defensive linemen.
The Tennessee guy that leaps out to me is John Henderson because of the way that he gets slapped around before a game.
Let's roll. That's it, baby.
I don't know if he'd learned that at Tennessee, but for a long time he needed to be slapped across the face prior to playing a game. He needed to taste some blood in his mouth, and I respect that.
Joe, that ain't even good enough. Come on, Joe! Thank you, baby! Thank you! Making blood come from my damn mouth!
I don't know if that was a pass-fail course at Tennessee, but I respect John Henderson for that fact, and then, of course, the institution as a whole because of it.
Up next.
They said the University of Miami. They didn't say Ohio.
Factories 8 and 9 cause controversy.
I wouldn't put them up there with these other football schools.
I vigorously disagree with that.
Historically, black colleges have produced some of the NFL's greatest players.
I came, I saw, and I did conquer.
Up until 1976, 77, Grambling had more professional ball players come out than any other school. During my time, we had so many great ball players come out of Jackson State.
Walter Payton becomes National Football League leading rusher.
Mississippi Valley.
He goes down to Jerry Rice. What a catch! Gets away!
There's only one guy in the field that's going to make that catch.
However, it's another group that often goes unnoticed that got our attention.
The number 9 football factory of all time, the MAC.
What we're doing now is we're using entire conferences as one unit.
You know why I don't look at it as a football factory? Because if you put a MAC conference game on primetime Saturday night through Musburger, and I don't think people would watch.
It would depend on how well the two teams had performed leading up to the game.
We're sort of changing the rules here in the middle of this top 10, which is fine. I mean, if the Democrats can do it for their election process, that's fine for this program.
I know that people don't realize how many great names have come out of the MAC conference.
Sack! Mason Taylor, 99, right on time. Fires, touchdown, Randy Moss again. A 38-yard touchdown run by Chester Taylor.
The gap is not as wide as it used to be in terms of the big colleges and the smaller schools.
You don't think at Kent State you can do nothing either. Look at you now. Best in the league.
A conference that has some very good football players who every now and then are going to sneak ahead and perform better than those, quote, big football factory schools.
Antonio Gates may be the greatest tight end in the history of this game.
You think MAC conference, you think, well, who's the quarterback in the MAC conference now?
With the 8th selection, Byron Leftwich, quarterback from Marshall.
Quarterback Chad Pennington from Marshall University.
With the 11th pick, Ben Roethlisberger, quarterback, University of Miami, Ohio.
Ben Roethlisberger wins a Super Bowl in his second season.
Ben Roethlisberger, the youngest quarterback ever to win a Super Bowl championship.
Once Roethlisberger hit big, people realized they play a pretty good brand of football in the MAC.
Play action fit. Over the middle, touchdown, Heath Miller.
The coaches who came out of Miami put the MAC on the map.
Cradle of coaches at Miami of Ohio with the Weave Eubanks and the Paul Browns, and we go right down the line.
That's Coach Paul Brown at the head of the class.
Play action, first play. I'll tell you if it's a pass.
I love the inclusion of the MAC because I like guys with chips on their shoulders, and basically that's what you get. You get a lot of guys that slip through the cracks. That the Big Ten doesn't recruit for some reason. It might be academics.
Another touchdown, Brady Moss.
It might be the height-weight speed ratio doesn't work out.
Touchdown, Josh Cribbs.
Now people want to talk about Antonio Gates. He's a freak of nature, but it wasn't like people coming out of high school saying, come to Ohio State and play tight end for us. He was a basketball player.
Gates, he's got it at the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
At the end of the day, you end up getting a lot of really good football players, and what I like is they get an attitude. They have a chip on their shoulder, and they want to prove those Big Ten schools that they were wrong.
Kent State sent 3 players to the 2008 Pro Bowl, third most among all college programs.
Pro Bowl 08. I'm there. Do that.
These players are savvy enough to know, hey, I want to go where I can start, and I can go to the NFL. He no longer has to go to those 15 or 20 schools. Why be a backup at Alabama when you can be a starter at Marshall?
My respect for the MAC conference is tremendous. But there's no way they should be on the list of top 10 football factories. It just does not equate. I feel like Jack Lambert's going to come out from the side and tackle me.
That'll cool your ass off.
The number 8 football factory of all time, Syracuse.
I think we deserve to be a little higher. I guess I'm biased, so to speak.
If you wanted to attend Syracuse University in upstate New York in the brutal part of the winter, you really wanted to play football.
I don't think Syracuse has been dominant since the 60s.
Jim Brown is going to go all the way for a touchdown!
And I wouldn't put them up there with these other football schools.
My admiration for Syracuse is high. Frankly, though, I'm surprised that they would be on the list at number 8.
You don't think of them as a football factory until you start looking at the individual players.
Running back at Syracuse spawned these great names.
You think of Jim Brown.
Jim Brown is in for the touchdown!
You think of Floyd Little.
Oh, how sweet it is!
You think of Larry Zonker.
Holds his way in the middle, gets to the 25.
Ernie Davis.
And this time, Surratt to Davis, and it is good.
Those are probably the big 4. These are some power runners with probably a lot more speed than they're given credit for.
Zonker, big hole, right side, 50, 45, 40.
I think the thing that Syracuse can really hang its hat on is that that's the school that produced, in my opinion, the greatest player in NFL history in Jim Brown.
Jimmy Brown breaks loose for a spectacular game.
Jim Brown, obviously, you can make an argument, the greatest football player of all time. He looked like he was bigger than everybody else. He would just have a little subtle move, and a linebacker or somebody would fall off to the side.
Wearing the number 44 was the highest honor at our number 8 football factory.
Think of Syracuse, think number 44. Who wore number 44? What an honor it was.
It's so ingrained in the culture of that school. It's the last 2 digits of the zip code. It's the first 2 digits of the telephone exchange. It is the tradition of the university. It was worn by Jim Brown. It was worn by Ernie Davis. For years on the football team, it was passed down as a badge of honor to whoever they thought would be the next great running back.
On top of having the greatest running back, Syracuse may have had the greatest tight end as well.
There's a reason they named that award after him, by the way, John Mackey Award. Give it to the best tight end in the business.
I got to thank Vince Swartzwalder, my head coach at Syracuse University, and the coaching staff, first for giving me number 88 instead of number 44. Number 44 was a running back. They told me I was a tight end. I thank them for that.
This year, Syracuse will add their 6th member to the Hall of Fame in Art Monk.
Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
What a Hall of Fame move.
This will give the Orangemen more players in the Hall of Fame than Texas, Florida State, and Oklahoma combined.
This guy, long overdue for the Hall of Fame, showed at SU what kind of a great NFL player he would be.
I think in recent years, Syracuse has just been one of those teams that you wonder why they can't do a lot better than they have recently. They've had some pretty good football players. When you start talking about McNabb.
I remember McNabb coming into the Big House in Michigan and scoring with one shoe on.
That is a play that only McNabb can make.
He's become one of the most underrated drop-back passers in the NFL. That's what made him the quarterback that could lead his team to 4 straight NFC championships.
The Eagles are headed to the NFC Championship game.
When you have a talented wide receiver like Marvin Harrison, it makes your job a lot easier. He's kind of one of the guys that put me into the mold of quarterback that I wanted to be.
He got it! Touchdown, Marvin Harrison!
Greg Roman had a very good college career, but when he came into the NFL, again, like so many Syracuse guys, people thought, well, he's a little undersized. He's going to get eaten up by those big offensive tackles. And sure enough, he just used his speed to get around them and became one of the great dominant players in the NFL.
3 sacks, even to safety!
Let's go, we here now!
Keith Bullock is another one.
This is when I signed my letter of intent to go to Syracuse University.
People thought highly of him, but I don't think anybody thought this was going to be a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker, and sure enough, he went in there and has had some terrific seasons.
Intercepted Bullock! Self-proclaimed Mr. Monday Night!
Let's not forget David Tyree. Let's not forget one of the greatest catches we will ever see in Super Bowl history, made by an Orangeman.
How in the world did he do that?
What a catch he made.
What a remarkable catch. Probably will go down in history as the best catch in a Super Bowl game.
By the way, Tyree's coach, Tom Coughlin, Syracuse class of '68. Up next, one legend still coaches.
They've got a great coach who can be carbon dated.
And another's impact is still felt today.
You can't think of them without going back to the heydays of the 50s and 60s.
Welcome to the team. Here's your signing bonus.
Illinois' all-time roster reads like a Hall of Fame program. Red Grange, George Halas, Ray Nitschke, and Dick Butkus.
Look out, go on.
Even with these big names, we still found better programs in the Big Ten.
The number 7 football factory of all time, Penn State.
They've got a great coach who can be carbon dated.
Head coach Joe Paterno has been churning out NFL talent for over 42 years.
Come on, take off now. Let's go.
The NFL talent has flowed out of Happy Valley since Joe has been there. The consistency at that place is almost numbing.
Holy cow!
Joe Pa's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I've never seen a guy that age with that kind of energy, ever.
You tough out there now.
Joe Paterno is the most important figure in college football.
That's a man, though. Love Joe Pa. What changes about Penn State as long as Joe Paterno's there and they keep cranking out these linebackers?
You think Penn State, you automatically start thinking about linebackers.
Linebacker you.
You can't get a moniker without earning it. You can take a look at the history of linebackers that were there before myself and after when I played, and you certainly can look at these names and go, man, these guys were pretty good football players.
What a great hit.
Bottle and Shane Conlon.
Wherever he goes, Conlon's right with him.
Arrington. Jack Ham just jumped off the practice field to me.
Here's the pass near side. Intercepted. Jack Ham. He's to the 15.
You could make the argument that Jack Ham was one of the great outside linebackers in the history of the National Football League.
It's beyond words for me to tell you the kind of pride I have when I present Jack Ham for induction into the Hall of Fame.
Paul Posluszny came out last year. This acknowledges the Butkus Award winner. And this year, Dan Connor coming out. We can go on and on. Kids who want to be linebackers. 9 times out of 10, Penn State's going to be on that list.
As highly as the linebackers are considered, people want to take a shot at the running back.
Running back, Penn State University, Curtis Enis.
Absolute no-nos in the NFL draft in the 90s has never taken a Penn State running back.
And it's mostly because Kajana Carter was the first pick in the draft and got hurt and didn't pan out.
It's only lately, in the last 10, 12 years, guys like that have been a disaster. Obviously, prior to that, with Lydell, who was great.
What a great play!
Franco, who was great.
That's cut out of the air. The ball is pulled in by Franco Harris.
Lenny Moore, before my time, great. Warner was a great pick.
John Cappelletti was the best running back at Penn State.
Come on, John, run!
In his 4 years at college, won the Heisman Trophy, did everything.
What was the last one you hit to Cappelletti? Was that the glove 3? Glove 2? Yeah, that was good.
Johnson with Kansas City. I mean, he's a wonderful football player.
And the man beast, the Doberman that is Larry Johnson, continues to churn.
This is the kind of weather I like. Nice, wet, muddy, nasty. They about to get me in my Penn State zone.
If you look at the big picture, which is what this is supposed to be all about, I think the Penn State running backs are pretty darn good.
Where do you start? Mike Munchak, Hall of Fame lineman, great coach. You go through the years with Joe Paterno teams, and he just turned out one NFL player after another.
Ali destroyed Kelly Holcomb. Touchdown Seahawks! Bobby Ingram!
Kick by Robbie Gould. End over end. To the upright. And it's goal!
One Penn State or another. Game time.
Penn State is ranked 7th on our list of football factories for their 5 Hall of Famers, 34 Pro Bowlers, and years of stockpiling the NFL with talent.
Obviously, when you talk about the Nittany Lions, you always start with Joe Pa, and Joe Paterno has been there for a long time. I believe the whole university will be named after Joe Paterno before he leaves.
The number 6 football factory of all time, Alabama.
Though Alabama has several current Pro Bowlers,
Touchdown Seahawks! And number 37 the record.
the number 6 football factory made their name with their past.
Well, it's impossible to think of Alabama without thinking of the bear with the houndstooth hat.
Think of Bear Bryant.
Big passes come out of there, through.
Think about Joe Namath.
Namath looking for the end zone, throwing, touchdown to Maynard.
Even though those names are so far in Alabama's past, they still resonate in Alabama's present.
You know, it's one of those teams that I'd say, sure, I don't even care if they're ranked ahead of Penn State because Bear Bryant did a hell of a job there. The legendary story with Bear Bryant is when he really wanted to recruit, they'd bring him into the office, Coach Bryant, this is such, and he just looked at him and said, boy, you want to be a winner?
That little old string.
Bryant is a legend, a myth. He's more than a man who teaches them football.
Bear had a dynasty. Bear had a kingdom. They have not been able to, nor do I think anybody can in this day and age, run the same kind of program he ran.
Always a very, very good football area. Don Hudson went to Alabama.
Hudson streaks down the field to receive it. Here it comes. Look out, Bella.
Just some classic players that have come from that school.
Fires, end zone, Ozzie, touchdown Brown! Ozzie Newsome with a marvelous catch!
One of the first very big decisions that Vince Lombardi ever made was putting Bart Starr in charge of that offense.
Starr looks, has time, throws in the end zone, great catch!
If there was a man playing on offense that said he wasn't worried about Derek Thomas, I'd have to call him a liar.
Another sack for Derek Thomas.
I think Stabler could be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, in the huddle today, we got the snake at quarterback, the kid from Alabama.
He's under the gun. He throws.
At Alabama and Bear Bryant, you had those good quarterbacks that came out of there. Every quarterback is going to tell you, I can't do what I do without an offensive line.
Number 57, Dwight Stevenson, and number 73, John Hanna, became two of the most dominant linemen in NFL history.
But you also have to put Alabama on this list for Forrest Gump. I mean, that guy could run.
Our number 6 football factory has cranked out 6 Hall of Famers.
At the University of Alabama, where I was lucky enough to go to school, we won the championship.
And Alabama has more quarterbacks that have won the Super Bowl than any other college program.
The game is over. The New York Jets are the world champions.
I think it's been a long time since Alabama's been a football factory.
But if there is one thing that is non-political, it's being for Bart Starr tonight.
The memory of Alabama is growing fainter, but they were the preeminent program for 20 years under Bear Bryant.
You talk to everybody that ever played at Alabama, they'll tell you this is the mystique of the home of the champions. No matter what happens to the tide will be low sometimes, but you know what's going to happen next. It's going to be a high.
Stay tuned for a Motor City Meltdown.
If I'm a Michigan man, I'm upset about this poll.
No way! Right now, for this particular issue, it's on.
Tonight, NFL Total Access.
Reveal our top 5 football factories. Here's the list so far.
Number 10.
They're not the real orange.
It's controversial, but the Volunteers get our vote.
Are you kidding me? Barely made the list at 10?
Number 9. Attack of the MAC.
That has to be probably the most underrated conference there is.
Number 8. Larry Zonka, Jim Brown, they're on any list.
It's one running back after another.
Number 7. If you're grading on the curve, linebacker U gets straight A's.
It was a linebacker factory.
Number 6. It's been a long hibernation, but the Bears legend still has teeth.
Bear had a kingdom.
And now, the number 5 football factory of all time, Michigan.
Michigan is one of the great brands in collegiate athletics.
65,000 in Michigan Stadium at Ann Arbor.
That block M is instantaneous recognition.
You get goosebumps just from the atmosphere.
When you say big house, you don't have to elaborate. You see those marvelous winged helmets, yellow and blue. You don't go, what team is that? You go, Michigan. From the fight song, hail to the victors valiant, hail to the conquering heroes.
To the uniforms, Michigan embodies what is great about college football.
Unloading deep, Braylon Edwards left side. He's got it. Touchdown, Michigan.
I would watch the Michigan-Ohio State game and pray for Michigan touchdowns.
Desmond Howard is going all the way.
Just to hear the Michigan fight song.
For an Ohio State grad to hear that over and over again,
touchdown, Michigan.
It's irritating to the point of disgusting.
There has never been any great drop-off in the caliber of football.
I used to get a kick out of Bo because when Michigan would lose a game and I'd show up and I'd say, Bo, what went wrong? And he would always say, we didn't run the ball enough. We've got to run the football. I mean, that was his answer to everything.
Michigan epitomized the lunch pail football mentality, which certainly translates to the next level.
When I think of Michigan, I think alignment.
Big men have become synonymous with the big house.
You look in the Hall of Fame, and Dan Deerdorf is a former Michigan guy.
That is your prototypical offensive lineman to me, is a Michigan man.
You think of the Midwest, you think of cold, and you think of linemen controlling the game.
You know, it was a long time before they ever had a quarterback. Now, you got one after the other.
Jim Harbaugh technically could be the first guy that you can go to in this lineage.
On a drop, fires in the left corner of the end zone. Touchdown!
Elvis Gerback.
Gerback firing for the end zone. He's got Alexander.
Brian Griese.
Griese winds up, throws, back of the end zone. Touchdown!
But I don't know how many of them just jump out and you go, yeah.
Tom Brady. The greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL is what Tom Brady could be. You can even make an argument that he already is in terms of the championships, in terms of the records that he holds.
There's the record for Brady.
That school made the transition.
Carl Ward gets away on a 43-yard touchdown run.
It recognized that the forward pass
Touchdown, Michigan!
was the way football was going to be played.
Our number 5 factory has produced 7 Hall of Famers and 36 Pro Bowlers.
Anthony Carter was a heck of a wide receiver.
Anthony Carter with a big catch.
Just recently, the defensive backs with Ty Law.
The defensive back from Michigan, Ty Law.
Marlon Jackson.
Brady lost one down the middle. Intercepted. Marlon got it. We're going to the Super Bowl.
I know y'all getting ready. We're getting ready too.
What they do is they kind of breed toughness.
We are the leaders and best in every facet of life.
The Vice President of the United States, Congressman Gerald Ford of Michigan.
They're going to play hard, study hard.
Cheaters never prosper.
To me, it's Michigan and a bunch of wannabes.
We should be number 1 on this list, and the fact that we're just number 5 is an outrage.
The number 4 football factory of all time, the Ohio State University.
You know, always must use "the" for the Ohio State University because it makes them sound as arrogant as they really are.
Mike Vrabel, the Ohio State University. The Ohio State University.
Just a D. You go into that first orientation, they have big block letters, THE.
I wish they would finally win the national championship.
The Gators have put this one on ice.
But it's got to gall Michigan people.
This is personal. This is personal. This is not business. This is personal.
Ohio State! Ohio State!
Ohio State certainly is number 1 in the Big Ten.
And Ginn down the sideline.
When you look at Ohio State, it's a lot like Michigan, this powerful state school that has just remained dominant for so many years.
They had one team in the late 90s that probably was the best team in the state of Ohio, including the Browns and the Bengals.
Orlando Pace, who has another big pancake block.
When you draft an Ohio State Buckeye,
St. Louis Rams select Orlando Pace.
you're going to get a player that is very knowledgeable about the game.
Go outside up right here and stay right here.
Very passionate about it.
One thing we didn't do last week, guys, we didn't play 60 minutes.
And is really sound fundamentally.
It's interesting, isn't it, how many wide receivers they've turned out.
Warfield's got him 35, 40, 45, 50. Touchdown, Chris Carter. Joey Galloway, touchdown.
I hate to do a former Buckeye like that.
Touchdown, Terry Glenn. Dodds, he's in. Touchdown, Santonio Holmes.
Play, you can play as long as me. I mean, you cannot pick really one position that they've excelled at because they've excelled at so many.
Mike Vrabel, the all-time sack leader for Ohio State.
Bill Willis with 6'2" and 215 pounds of sheer defensive power.
The number 4 football factory has produced 53 Pro Bowlers, 17 more than Michigan.
It has a little linebacker you to it.
10-5, touchdown, Chris Spielman.
A lot of great defensive backs.
Kickoff, Charles Springs has it.
When I close my eyes, I see Heisman Trophy winners lined up and the legacy of great running backs.
Eddie George down the left sideline. They won't catch him.
They just can't produce any quarterbacks. I don't understand why The Ohio State University could be ranked above Michigan. The conversation begins and ends with the 2 words Tom Brady. Over.
There's the record for Brady.
Who does Ohio State have? Herb Street? And I love Herb Street. Herb Street knows I love you. Know I love you. But right now, it's on. Art Schlichter?
Quarterback Art Schlichter, Ohio State.
I imagine that he won't be sitting for this because NFL Films couldn't get a pass into whatever prison he's sitting in. Where are we going to go? What other quarterback? Kent Graham?
Play action, fake by Graham. He sacked, he fumbles the ball.
They produced guys who've done pretty well. I mean, Mike Tomczak was a pretty good player.
Sorry, Rich, but our number 4 football factory has churned out more talent at every other position.
Kid is having a day.
From Ohio State University, Chris Carter.
There's an image associated with Ohio State of excellence that has been carried on into the NFL.
Simply the best.
The top 3 factories and more controversy on the way.
I think you're overrating him.
Three of college football's most storied programs
Boys in blue?
just missed the cut.
Michigan State. No, I'm just kidding. I can't say that with a straight face.
Hook 'em horns. Vince Young in Texas got snubbed.
Unbelievable. I don't see Texas.
McDonald thought he saw better with no face mask.
And we thought the list looked better without the Sooners.
I don't see Oklahoma.
I am flabbergasted.
And UCLA's best didn't measure up.
Come on now. You got to show me some love now.
I don't see a UCLA.
But even the most storied program of all couldn't top our list.
The number 3 football factory of all time, Notre Dame.
In 1887, Notre Dame was introduced to the game of football, and so began the most spirited romance in the history of sport.
If this were a spirit poll, Notre Dame would be number 1.
The spirit of Notre Dame is, I think, if it could be bottled, it could probably light up the universe.
Hands off to Hawley. He's inside the 10. He's at the 5. Touchdown. Montana rolling out the right. Throwing under pressure. Throws his pass. Caught by Clark.
What I'm interested in is our football team being Notre Dame football team.
It isn't necessary to see a good tackle. You can hear it.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the greatest football factory is the University of Notre Dame.
Go, man. Quickly, quickly, quickly.
For a long time, there was sort of an entitlement. We will get star players to come play for us.
Our number 3 factory has produced more Pro Bowlers than any other college program.
He's got Kessler. Touchdown, Raiders.
And their list of 10 Hall of Famers keeps on growing.
1,000 career catches for the amazing Tim Brown.
Complete to the ball down to the 35. He's got 4 men on his back and gets down to the 17.
Los Angeles Rams select Jerome Bettis.
That is the rookie out of Notre Dame like lightning.
Yeah. Tradition at that place.
The game of the year, the Rose Bowl team and mighty Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is really the brand name of college football.
They will never join a conference because they are a conference. They are a schedule and a community unto themselves.
I think it captures a little bit of the imagination of people that wanted to go there, have dreamt about it, have heard about it, have read about it.
You feel you're at a very special part of football history.
Don't forget, man, we're going to get up on the run. We're going to go, go, go.
But you're maybe even like touching the Vatican in some respect. If you didn't cry during Rudy, you don't have any soul. You're not human.
I hate Notre Dame to the point where I rent Rudy hoping he pulls a groin. No, obviously you got to give it to him. I mean, if I talk about Tom Brady being perhaps the greatest quarterback ever, you have Joe Montana, the end-all and be-all in many people's discussion for quarterbacks, and he went to Notre Dame. He's a Golden Domer, just like Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann was great until he had a rhyme with Heisman.
Heisman loads it up, lob into the end zone. Touchdown! The Washington Redskins have an NFL championship.
Where have all the Notre Dame players gone?
It's been a long time since they won one for the Gipper.
Win one for the Gipper.
They didn't win too many for that Gipper last year, if I recall.
We talk about respect. We're talking about respect around the country.
The challenge is Notre Dame kids have to graduate.
Great academics will never sacrifice that.
They haven't been producing the same number of guys, but you can never, ever say Notre Dame's out of the picture.
Notre Dame football prestige is at stake. The ghost of Knute Rockne walks today.
Tough part for them now is the Notre Dame mystique still the same among kids growing up as it is among my set and older who understand what they've meant in the college football world.
I will go officially on record as protesting our number 3 status.
The bus's last stop is here in Detroit.
Because they're put up on a pedestal in film and television and lore and books. I think you're overrating them, and that is definitely a bitter man talking.
Stay tuned. More bitterness still to come.
You got only one glaring mistake.
Two programs from the Sunshine State failed to make our list.
Man, they got to show us some love.
The Gators produced the NFL's all-time leading rusher.
Emmitt Smith has eclipsed Walter Payton.
The Noles delivered prime time.
Kiss them goodbye, baby!
No, Florida State.
But the vote for the number one football factory in Florida was unanimous.
The number 2 football factory of all time. The U.
It's the only school that can go by a letter.
Always has been, always will be, all about the U.
For a 15, 20-year period, they just churned them out.
Miami blew past Notre Dame for the number 2 spot with an unprecedented run of talent.
Touchdown, Reggie Wayne!
You look back at some of those Miami teams. If you just graduated everyone and turned them into an NFL team, how good would they be? And how high would the salary cap have to be?
You can't hurt this. I'm a machine, jerk.
The talent is just freakish. Jeremy Shockey and Kellen Winslow Jr. on the same team.
Touchdown, Winslow!
Frank Gore and Willis McGahee and all those other great running backs.
Flip Portis, touchdown Redskins.
10-10 fourth quarter. 2 Hurricanes on the field.
From 01 to 04, where you had probably the best run in the history of college football. 19 first-rounders in 4 years. I don't think we'll ever see that again.
It's hard to believe that in 1979, our number 2 factory nearly dropped its football program.
A couple things kicked in for them. Number 1, Schnellenberger.
Coach Howard Schnellenberger's arrival to the University of Miami was a godsend for me.
Remember what he called it? The state of Miami. Those Miami kids who could flat out run.
Who do you think it is?
Those Miami kids who were fearless and would strike you on every play. And they locked it down and the talent started to flow.
It doesn't date as far back as it does for Notre Dame, but I think when you're talking about the impact now and in recent years, I don't think there's one that's really much better.
Hurricanes number 1, baby.
Defensive tackle, University of Miami, Warren Sapp.
Ray Lewis, linebacker, University of Miami.
Absolutely not. They should not be ranked ahead of Notre Dame because their history is 25 years.
Not so fast, Charles. The Mad Stork Ted Hendricks, Jim Otto, and Otis Anderson are all Hurricane products.
There goes Otis Anderson. He's got a touchdown.
Otis Anderson, running back, Miami of Florida.
What I do?
Make plays.
Nothing but make plays, baby.
When you think of Miami, you just think of speed.
Devin Hester, you are ridiculous.
Whether it's a running back,
He's gone.
whether it's a wide receiver,
Andre Johnson caught, touchdown.
whether it's a defensive player, they just have fast players.
Antoine Roll does it again.
Each position seems like it has a guy from Miami.
You know who the best back in the league is.
Best safety in the NFL, man, right here.
For a while there, if you played quarterback for the University of Miami, you had a shot to make the NFL just on that fact alone. Bernie Kosar.
Unbelievable throw by Kosar.
Jim Kelly.
Yeah, baby, Monday Night Football is where you got to be.
Joe Paterno tried to recruit Jim to come to Penn State to play linebacker.
The 4th straight conference championship. NFL record, 21st season in a row that Vinny Testaverde has a touchdown pass.
You take Michael Irvin, take all those guys. They still are close to the U. You know, it's family.
I think most of y'all know how I feel about the U.
I love y'all, bro. That's why I came back, man.
We have a brotherhood that nobody can ever take away from us. So proud of you. Thanks, you understand that?
Ohio State and Michigan. In the 70s, I thought they were the quintessential football factory, but I think Miami really surpassed even them.
If you want a great lawyer, go to Harvard Law. Well, if you want a great football player, you go to Miami because this is what they develop. It's all about the hue, man.
No, it's all about who beat the U on our list.
They're like Miami when Miami was on a roll. They got a bunch of players.
They are the 33rd team.
Before we unveil the number 1 football factory of all time, let's review our list so far.
Number 10. Peyton and the Preacher are poster boys for Tennessee.
Reggie White and Peyton Manning. You can't separate the two and what they've meant to the NFL.
Number 9. Forget the Whopper, the MAC has always supplied big-time talent.
Every year, there's a guy in that league that you've got to go take a look at.
Number 8.
Let's go, we here now.
No one needs to make excuses for putting the Cuse on this list.
and you don't think of them as a football factory, please start looking at the individual players.
Number 7. Even at 81, Paterno's no ordinary Joe.
Keep them moving. Now, a little fun out there today.
Neither are his players. Number 6. Sweet Home Alabama.
Even with LSU coming up in Georgia, when you think SEC, you think Alabama.
Number 5. The Big House gets players ready for the big time.
It's Michigan and a bunch of wannabes.
Number 4. The Big Ten Football Factory.
They're not as fast as the SEC. Are you kidding me? You want to get a foot race with Ted Ginn?
Number 3. Even a Gipper speech.
Win one for the Gipper.
Couldn't put the Irish on the top of our list.
I will go officially on record as protesting our number 3 status.
Number 2. The U's almost at the head of this class.
2. Who is number 1?
And now, the number 1 football factory of all time, USC.
Out of all the schools, it's going to be USC.
Clearly number 1.
They're phenomenal.
I don't think there's any doubt. USC is number 1. When you have as many players as they have coming into the NFL at all positions, I don't think there's any way to really combat it.
Hey, the Trojans. How about the Trojans?
It's their success at the collegiate level, number 1.
11 national championships.
We kept the teams off balance with the great passing of Pat Hayden. We did just a fantastic job in winning the national championship.
7 Heisman Trophy winners.
Number 3, Carson Palmer.
151 All-Americans.
I take great pride in the fact that USC has the most players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
USC has produced 11 Hall of Famers, 59 Pro Bowlers, and many household names.
Frank Gifford.
Good blocking sets Frank free.
O.J. Simpson.
Number 32, O.J. Simpson.
Marcus Allen.
It's great to be a Raider.
I have already had a call from Moscow. They think that Marcus Allen is a new secret weapon, and they insist that we dismantle it.
Really, just look at our secondary. You had Dennis Smith. Ronnie Lott. Joey Browner. Jeff Fisher. I mean, 3 number 1 picks. You got a head coach in the NFL.
The offensive lineman, Anthony Munoz to Bruce Matthews to Don Mosbar, just to name a few.
It was a special place and time, and seems to be back to it.
I think USC deserves to be ranked number 1 because of now.
What Pete Carroll's done with the school right now is downright silly. It's unbelievable.
It's a great day. It's a great day to be a Trojan.
Bush diving for the pylon. Yeah, he's in.
I've been watching USC football for 40 years, but this last 7 years has been the best it's ever been.
Someday we'll teach you guys how to stay at the top for an extended amount of time.
Every position you can find a USC star.
Lofa Tatupu is making a career out of picking off the Philadelphia Eagles.
He went to USC? Oh, he was a beast, too.
The Cincinnati Bengals select Carson Palmer.
Palmer pull up to his tight end.
Pittsburgh Steelers select Troy Polamalu.
Has time. Across the middle. It is picked off by Troy Polamalu. The USC kid kills the USC kid.
You've played against great competition, not just on Saturdays, but all week long.
Oh, man, USC.
If you're not a USC fan or alum, you hate SC.
I went to FE with UCLA. We're going to smash them.
It's the daunting, intimidating fight song that you hear 5,000 times. It's the horse and Tommy Trojan and the beautiful cheerleaders and the gorgeous weather.
Tackle from University of Southern California, Tony Baselli.
I'm going to go after the guy and try to destroy him. He's trying to destroy me and embarrass me, so I'm going to try and embarrass him.
It's the history, all those great players that have come before you, and the importance and emphasis placed on carrying on the tradition. You go to USC and you're a Trojan for life.
Our list is complete, but the debate continues.
You got only one glaring mistake.
I think we deserve to be a little higher.
That Florida State is not included.
People could make arguments about Tennessee. Should Michigan and Ohio State be flipped?
2 words, Tom Brady.
How's USC number 1? How can Notre Dame not be number 1?
How many USC quarterbacks have world championship rings?
I mean, we can go on all day, but isn't it beautiful?
I need to speak to Sable. If he's in charge,